So, Joel, tell me the story about how you started working at HobbyTown.
So I was hired back in about 2009. I had seen the application on the window and brought in some aids of terrain that I'd built, thinking that that this would be a perfect fit for me. Since I was a kid, we actually lived near the Grand Island Hobby Town, and every time we would go to groceries in Grand Island, I would wheedle my way into, can I spend some time in Hobby Town? And so I spent hours just looking at all the different things. So I already had an idea of what kinds of things Hobby Town carried. So I thought, all right, I have a lot of knowledge to work with. I have a lot of creativity I want to bring to this. This is something I can be excited about. So I came in, I interviewed, and having a physical aid, I think, made a big difference because I was hired on the spot and started work that very same day and have not left since.
I do remember that. It was I remember you brought in, it was paper houses that you had printed and folded and got them all together, and they looked great. And during the process of the interview, I was just like, oh man, this guy, he understands what's going on, and he would be a great fit. And now here we are.
Yep. And now 17 years later, I'm in 3D printing terrain for the store.
Yes.
So
Yes. It's the same skill set, just in a different way, keeping people happy. I suppose some of what I kind of want to go through are just how much it's changed at the store in all of that time and how much your role has changed. So do you remember, were you working, how often were you working in the store, and kind of what was your initial skill set when you first got hired?
So when I was very first hired, I was taking on the games organizer role. So I was helping a lot with running events specifically, as well as that area. We've had major changes in that over the years, massive growth. So when I first started, it was a small enough community each time we would play a game that we would get everyone enrolled in software. And then traditionally, we would just essentially shout out the table numbers and matching and pairings. And with 8 to 20 people, it didn't take that long. And I recognized enough of the players. I would stand at table 1. All right, you and you're playing here. You and you're table 2. And just kind of go down the list. As time went on, though, our events got so much larger that we need to start having a more professional way to get that information out to the players. So we started printing them on paper sheets, and we put them on the table, which did lead to congestion in those areas. But, since the community no longer, no one knew everyone anymore. So you do not have the recognition going. So it allows, all right, you have to just go by table number. And that was working well. But as we got even bigger, we started to need less congestion in those areas. So now we have multiple widescreen televisions on the walls with scrolling pairings to get that information out. So people can see it and move along. And also, we run so many more events concurrently than we used to that being able to assign a different game to each television has made a big difference. So players can still get all the information they need without getting lost. On the same note, for announcements, instead of having to shout over the crowd, we now have a microphone system. One of our, when I first began, we almost had to give vocal training to our employees on how to project and use a diaphragm to bellow over the masses. So now it's nice to be able to just actually, speak calmly and clearly over the microphone.
Yeah, it's a lot different than it used to be when we used to do it all kind of by hand, or it being much smaller. Do you remember when you started to transition more towards a management role and you started having more leadership responsibilities?
Yeah, it was a very gradual change because a lot of it was, hey, here's a task that needs filling, and I have the capability to do so. And we were just kind of add on a little bit here, a little bit there of, all right, you can handle more, we can trust you with more. And it was, instead of being a quick flipping the switch into you're now a manager, it felt more like, all right, you're doing all the things already. Let's make this official.
I remember it was 2011, 2012-ish range when you really were, we'd hand over the keys, for a weekend or whatever, and you would man the ship. So it was a slow and steady progression where you started doing more and you could gain those skills and being good at those things. I also remember during that period of time, you really started to gain a lot of knowledge about being really good at rules enforcement and rules and judging for games like Magic and stuff. Tell me a little bit about how that you kind of fell into that and how you approached that.
At the very beginning, it was just wanting to do a better job of running the smaller events that we're going through. And then it transitioned into, as we did larger and larger events, we needed more sanctioned judges. Since I had part of that knowledge, I wanted to go the next step so we would not have to always outsource our judging costs and requirements. So there was a lot of like individual study that I would go through the rules of Magic. I would go through the tournament rules because there's a judge program that Magic was running, which had an organized course of information you needed to know. They had testing processes. And so I got my level 1 certification fairly quickly. And that was enough for most of our small tournaments. Then we expanded into running like regional levels of events, which we needed level 2 and level 3 judges. And at the time in Nebraska, in fact, it's still in Nebraska, we have very few judges for our population. So when we had the opportunity, we actually you actually hired a level 3 judge to come and judge our major event with the expectation that I would be able to take the level 2 test because you had to have a proctor for it. And the proctor had to be level 3. So the only way to it was either send Joel out of the state to the judge, the level 3 judge, or bring the level 3 judge into our 2 Joel. So you brought him in, I took the test, and was able to pass. And then was the level 2 judge in Nebraska for some time.
Yeah, that really helped out. I remember that really created a lot of stability in the store in terms of making sure that our events were ran professionally and stuff like that. That was a big deal. Let's switch gears a little bit. So, I mean, you've been around for quite a few years and you've seen the store change in a lot of different ways. And, we've moved and all that sort of stuff. Are there any particular times during all of the changes that were, I don't know if scary is the right word, or maybe worse than others that you felt during those periods of times, or things that were worrisome to you?
I mean, we've gone through a lot over the last 17 years. Because when I was hired on, it was after the economic crisis. So we saw some immediate growth. But after that, obviously, we went through COVID. And that changed our operations day to day constantly. And we were always trying to, follow the safety mandates while still maintaining customer relations, still trying to do events, but keep them safe. So that was probably the most worrisome time.
What were some of the things that happened during that time? Because, we were mandated to, at first we were mandated that we couldn't let customers in the store, but then eventually once we let them in, we still couldn't gather. Mm-hmm. So how did that change our business from an event standpoint?
That was a massive change because when we did run them, when we finally opened up, it was a lot of trying to space things out to give people enough space around them and create small bubbles. So there was a lot more organization needed for where people were allowed to be. Also with the mask mandates, there was a lot of having to enforce it on a to everybody who did not want to. And that's, either you follow the rules or you have to leave. So we need to be very firm while still, keeping things calm and controlled.
I remember there was a period of time where we had to cancel all of our events for a year and a half or so, and we just used that back event space as just like a
that's right,
for lack of a better way of putting it, where we just piled stuff up on those back tables. So it was crazy how different the business has changed.
Yeah, because like you said, for that year, literally these events that did not exist.
You've been with us for 17 years. You're a different person than you were when you first started by quite a bit. What if anything, has HobbyTown shaped you and your character in these 17 years?
So I've always believed and been told that I can do anything. Very positive. And HobbyTown's given me a chance to do a little bit of everything, which is what I love about it, why I love coming to work each day, because there'll be some new thing that'll be presented to me. And I love solving puzzles. So when I view every new challenge, like, all right, what am I going to figure out today? For example, now we have a new Fizzbatch machine that we are going to program to sort all our Magic cards. I get to help with that, and I'm excited for it. And that's just what's happening this year. So every time, like I said, every time I come to work, there's something new to do, and that excites me.
So here's another question. I asked Mike this, but when you started 17 years ago, there probably was a piece of equipment that was either cutting edge or it was nice to have. And then now, today, it basically is obsolete. Is there anything that you can think back on the olden days in terms of how the business has changed and how we operate that that's changed so much in that period of time?
So the biggest change there is just the way we organize cards. We used to have a wall of binders with all the cards inside, and we would pull them down for people to look at one by one. We'd flip the customer could flip the pages they went, and we'd have to keep an eye on everything. Now there's just so much more that is physically impossible. We cannot have binders. So we have a whole room full of drawers of organized inventory and a computer kiosk system for players to like set an order up, and then we pull it. It's gone from a here, look at this, to a organized system of action 1, action 2, we'll pull it for you, and here it is.
It's dramatically different than it used to be. In a good way, I think, for both the customer and the staff. Hopefully.
We've had great feedback from almost everyone. There was the learning period of, oh, you don't have buttons anymore? Okay, well, how do I do this then? Then once we walk them through the kiosks at the computers, there's, oh, this is so much easier.
If you were writing the history book of HobbyTown, this chapter that you're working in, what would you name it? How would you describe this time, do you think, in terms of the larger scope of the business?
Just an era of constant change. We've been growing, expanding. What we carry has been, curated more and more as we go on, as we get more data on what people actually are wanting, and all the new things that keep coming out, and we bring in to huge popular appeal.
All right, Joel. You've been part of a couple of really interesting events at the store. Why don't you tell us about the most interesting event you've been a part of at HobbyTown?
The one that almost springs to mind, because it was the most severe, was probably when we had it was a Friday Night Magic event, and a customer thought that his wallet had been stolen. And he was swearing up and down that someone had taken it and would not calm down. Eventually, he went out to his car and came back with a large blade and started threatening everybody. And the first I noticed was when 2 of our younger players saw that, made a smart move, and ran out the front door. So I ran over to see, okay, what's going on here? And saw the guy with the knife. So I walked over to him, calmed him down, got him to leave the premises, that we'll check the cameras and such, but this is not what you want to be doing right now. Got him to leave, and we locked the door behind him and called the police right afterwards.
That was a wild evening. I got that phone call. I was like, what happened?
Yeah, but no one got hurt, and that's the important part.
That is exactly right.
Handled it like a pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tom, you had just left literally, I think, 20 minutes before that all went down that night. So
you've been with us forever. What's the secret to you staying at HobbyTown for as long as you have? What's the reason why you've chosen to?
I mean, when I first came to the interview, I was, you'd ask me, hey, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And I'd answered, I'm looking for a career. So that was the goal in the first place. And then as the years went on, I fell more and more in love with the job, with the people, especially with just everything about HobbyTown. Like, being able to come to work excited is such a big deal. Like, you don't get that in most occupations. And so I don't want to ever let go of that.
What's your favorite hobby?
See, that's a hard one because I've done everything in the store. Miniature wargaming is still the number one because I love painting and building.